Handre Pollard's done his ACL. He's going to be out for quite some time. So who are the other Springboks options for that fly half position? It's kind of nice to look at South African rugby, even if it's for an unfortunate reason with Pollard being out. We still don't know if South Africans, Springboks, will actually end up playing this year. There's still lots of things that need to fall into place. But in the event the Springboks can get in on the Rugby Championship, who's going to be playing 10 with Pollard out? I've had a look at some of the main contenders, some of their stats from what rugby they have played, be it recent or quite some time ago. And as always, you guys can let me know your thoughts on who you reckon the front runner should be. I'll kind of summarize this down to what's their strength and what's their weakness, but yeah, I'll go over more than just those numbers. So we'll start with the good stuff, and we'll start with Curwin Bosch. When I look at him, there's one stat that kind of sticks out, and it's all the stuff around his big old boot. Curwin's got a big old boot, and that is reflected in his stats. He averaged more kick meters than any other fly half in Super Rugby prior to the season getting called off. Now, this is quite some time ago. We're looking at really historic data, but it's the most recent data we've got for all the guys who are based domestically in South Africa. And yeah, that guy's got a big old boot. He's able to get really good airtime on the ball from kickoffs, which is a very plus factor of his. But I mean, he averages 305 kick meters a game. He played 6 games, 80 minutes each time. And had of his 27 average 0.2 possessions, he would kick 9.7 kicks per game. So almost like around about a third of the time he's going to kick the ball and hopefully get his forward pack going forward. So depending on what strategy you want to play with the rest of the Springbok pack, he's certainly a man with a big old boot. However, he has got a pretty glaring issue with his game, and I probably won't have to tell you guys, but it is his defense. His defense has been much criticized, and they reckon it's why he never used to be able to start for the Sharks even. And the stats reflect that. He averages 1.2 tackles per game and averages 1.7 missed tackles per game. The stats I'm looking at has an automatic calculation on tackle efficiency, and it factors in tackles made, missed tackles, and tackles that you made but were ineffective. And his tackle effectiveness is 35%. Which is the lowest in Super Rugby prior to lockdown, apart from Andreas Coetzee, who's 30%. That's of guys who played 5 games or more. There's a bunch of guys who came in on for like 10 minutes and missed 1 tackle, so the tackle percent is 0. But for guys who played a decent number of games, he is the second worst defender. Do you want a guy with that defensive record starting at a test match at 10? That's a question. His other stats, he averaged 14.3 points a game, beat a defender every other game, so not exactly like a huge attacking 10, like he 3 runs a game, 21 run meters, like 14 passes, so he's more of a distributor, will take the ball to the line every now and again, put the big boot in, goal kicking 75%, so pretty solid. Like I mentioned, his boot's generally pretty good. It is just his defense, which is pretty shocking. Remember, he's 23 years old. So I think, well, how many caps has he had? 2 caps for the Springboks. He was playing for a Sharks team with a 6-1 record, so a very good Sharks team. He was playing pretty well. It's just his defense. It's not the best. Out in Yankees, who's more of an incumbent behind Handre Pollard, a bit more experienced, 30 years old. 37 caps for the Springboks, if I'm not mistaken. Was it 37 or 38? Played 468 minutes, so within 12 minutes of Curwin Bosch. So pretty similar in terms of the comparison. I'm not going to adjust the numbers for that. His kind of plus is his selling point, if you want it. It's kind of hard to summarize it into one field because it's a little bit of everything. I'm just going to put it down to like playmaking, which is his job. Like, he's not got the most run meters, but he's pretty high up. Of all the guys I'm going to look at, I think he's second best for run meters, but he's he's number one for the amount of possessions he had per game. He gets the ball in his hands, so he is a key piece in that Lions team for whatever direction they're going to take. Whatever they're going to do, it probably goes through him. Which can just be the style the Lions play. Maybe they got a 9 whose instructions are give the ball to the 10 rather than make your own call. But yeah, he has 38 possessions a game, 23 passes, 8 kicks, like 5 runs. Like there's little 5.5 runs if you want to get really particular. But yeah, his goal kicking is not the best, 68%. His weakness is also his D, but it's better than Kerwin. He's a bit more well-rounded than Kerwin, I guess. Like, he's second for kick meters behind Kerwin. He's got 298. Remember, Kerwin had 305, so pretty similar. His goal kicking 68, as I mentioned, which is it's not quite as nice as 75, but he gets a fair few run meters, 46, takes the ball to the line more than Kerwin. Tackles, 3.2 tackles a game, misses 1.8, so 57% was his tackle efficiency, which is still pretty low for international level, but it's better than 35. So he's an overall more well-rounded player than Kerwin. But at 30 years old, you're probably not going to get any surprises out of Elton Yankees. I know he's got a lot of haters out there. I don't mind Elton Yankees at Super Rugby level. I don't think he's quite a test 10, personally. I think he's really good at Super Rugby level, and that suits him down to the ground. But yeah, those numbers never quite convert into top test form. But yeah, he's got lots of stuff going for him. Gets involved more than any other 10 on this list. Your next guy is Damien Willemse. A slight caveat with him. He played 6 games for 470 minutes. So again, within 10 minutes of Kerwin Bosch, so pretty comparable. He did play one of those games at fullback, though. He played 5 of them at 10 and 1 of them at 15. So it's going to have a slight variation in his numbers. His strong point from the numbers that we can see was his attack. And this probably comes from his days as playing fullback as well. He does like the ball in hand. He averages more run meters than any other guy on this list. He has 5.5 runs a game, which is the same as Elton Yankees, more than Kerwin Bosch, more than Marnie Libock, although I'll get to him in a minute, more than Rob Duprey, and more than Mornay Stain. 54 run meters. If he's a fullback, those are probably going to be easier to get. But remember, he only had 1 game at fullback. All the rest were from 10. And he has 2.7 defenders beaten, which is easily your top candidate. So if you're looking for a running 10 who's going to attack the line, he seems to be your guy. Where's his weakness at? Well, you can probably say it's his goal kicking percentage. It's 65, which is only marginally worse than Elton, but his defense is 5.5 tackles made, 1 point tackles missed, so 73% was his tackle efficiency. So his defense is a lot more solid than Elton. Is certainly a lot more solid than Kerwin. His goal kicking is a fair 10% worse than Kerwin. Remember, he was playing for the Stormers, 4 wins, 2 losses for them. Averaged 6.8 points a game. Scored a try. Had 2 try assists. So remember, Elton was playing for a pretty bad team, whereas these 2 guys were playing on teams which were quite successful. Overall, his numbers are really pleasing. 10 passes. He's got 24 possessions a game, which is a lot less than Elton and a bit less than Kerwin. And he's passing 10 times, running 5.5 times, kicking 6.8 times. Kick meters 226, so doesn't quite have as many kick meters a game. Maybe he doesn't have the same range as some of the other guys. Either that or he's just not kicking as often. But more of a runner than a kicker. Certainly a bit of a live wire. And he's a pretty flexible player in that he can play 10, 15. He's pretty flexible. I know we've seen Elton move out to 12 sometimes, but it's probably not his best position. And Bosch can play 15 as well. If you want to kind of hide him at fullback and hope that he doesn't have to make too many tackles, that's also an option. I think the Reds used to do that, right? They used to switch Quade Cooper to fullback when they were on defence. It's something you can do if you want to go with Kerwin and try and make him not have to take tackles up front. Marnie Libock from the Bulls is kind of a hard one to compare because I haven't adjusted numbers. He only played 2 starts. He had 5 games, but only 2 starts for 172 minutes. So kind of less than half of the minutes of some of these guys, so you can either just double these numbers in your mind. But he's a bit of an all-rounder. Like, there's not one thing that I can really put it down to. I'm just going to kind of put overall. He's got overall pretty good numbers all around, but he does have also pretty weak numbers with his goal kicking. And as I said, it's hard to gauge with how many minutes he played. 62% goal kicking is the worst of the bunch. He's not taking as many shots as some of the other guys. Averaged 10 points a game, which is actually pretty solid, seeing as he didn't have that many minutes. 18 run meters. Remember, if you're looking at the minutes being pretty much half or less than half, you may be doubling it to around 40, so that's pretty solid, but still not as good as Damien Willems are. His tackle efficiency is 63%, so he's better than Elton, better than Kerwin, not as good as Damien. His kick meters is 47, so that's maybe another area that lets him down a bit, but from what we've seen of him, he seems a bit more like a running 10. I think he's probably the longest shot of all these guys, to be fair, just because he does lack that experience. Remember, the Bulls were having a pretty bad season when he was playing for them as well. They had 1 win, 5 losses. So, yeah, it wasn't the most fun time. For Rob Duprey, who's the only guy based overseas of all these guys, his stats I've had to gather from a different website, so there may be a bit of different variation because he wasn't in Super Rugby, but it looks like he's played 9 games in 2020, some of them at the start of the year, and some of them since the Premiership resumed. I think his big strong point is actually one area that's quite different from the other guys, and it's his defensive numbers. Now remember, he's playing in the Premiership, so maybe it's just the style of game that's different, but his defensive numbers make pretty reading. 4.4 tackles, misses 0.7, so 85% tackle success rate. He's a big guy, Rob Duprey. He's a big guy. Most of his stats are pretty pleasing. However, and I'm just going to put it down specifically to running, his running game doesn't seem to be that flash. For a big guy, he just tends to like the contact a bit. Maybe that comes from his family, but you feel like if he was to get into a bit more space, then he'd be getting a bit more pay, because he only has 3 runs a game and 10 run meters, which is, less than Marnie Libock, less than Damien Willems, less than Elton Yankees, less than Kerwin Bosch. Again, he's in the Premiership. It's a different style of game. You can look to that. 1.3 defenders beaten per game, which is, again, it's less than Damien Willems. It's the same as Elton Yankees. He's a lot bigger than Elton Yankees. So you'd be thinking he can throw that big frame of his around a bit better. His goal kicking's pretty solid, 73%, so pretty reliable. 3 tries, 10 try assists. Remember, he's played more games than all these other guys. 27 years old, as I mentioned, big guy. He's had 1 cap for the Box that game over in America against Wales. Composure is maybe one from some of the games I've seen him. I remember he once, when he came to New Zealand and played the Blues, he kicked us off the park. He was the top scorer, had an absolutely phenomenal shift. But I feel like there's other games, like I saw him play in the resumption of the Premiership against Harlequins, and he had a bit of a stinker. So, yeah, it's a tough one with Rob Duprey. I often think he's better than he is, and sometimes he'll kind of let me down, but man, his numbers overall make for pretty good reading. The last one, it's also a bit of a long shot, the 36-year-old Mornay Steyn, by far the most capped of these guys, Springboks legend. Where does he do well? I'll give you 3 guesses. Where does Mornay Steyn rank pretty highly? Well, it's his goal kicking percentage. Kind of unsurprisingly, he's got a pretty high success rate with 80%. Yeah, that's kind of what he does. 6 games, he had 4 starts before him and Libock got swapped around. Played 370 minutes or 320 minutes, either way, whatever. My handwriting is not very clear. He's definitely got a bit of a weakness in his attack. Also, he's 36. He doesn't want to be running the ball, and it shows. Averages 1 run a game for 4 meters, so it's probably not something he's been looking to do. He did score a try, didn't beat any defenders, averaged 20 possessions. Defensive stats were actually really solid. 5.8 tackles a game, 0.7 miss, tackle efficiency 83%. So you could argue his defensive stats are better than Rob Duprey's, but his offensive stats are by far the worst But yeah, man, he kicks a lot of goals. 6.7 points. Remember, in a team that wasn't doing that well, did get dropped to the bench. At 36, you would have to say probably the longest of long shots. Who do I reckon? I do like Kerwin Bosch a lot. But honestly, I can see big international ball carriers lining him up, licking their lips at the thought of facing him. However, the Springboks coaching staff, as I mentioned, probably would have some way around it, either improving his technique as an area to work on or some kind of tactical shift where you can kind of protect him as much as possible. I'm not sure. Out in Yankees would potentially be a safe option, but I'm not sure that you're going to get that much more out of him in the long run. Like, you've seen him play at international level. You know what he's going to give you. I don't know that he's going to give you anything else. Been there and done it. Personally, I don't reckon he's quite the business at that level. But as I said, I do like him at Super Rugby level. I think he's really good. He's led that Lions team around for a few years, and they made some finals when he was there. Damian Willems is probably the guy I'm leaning to. Yeah, he's young. He's exciting. Maybe that's just kind of a Super Rugby feeling. You like these running players. Is his goal kicking up to international scratch? Don't know. Yeah, it's a tough one. Marnie Libock, I don't think quite has the experience. He's the only uncapped guy, I think, of all this bunch. And Rob Duprey might be another choice. But I feel like the whole Duprey bunch are kind of on the outer with the current Springbok management. But yeah. So Damian Willems would probably be my favourite. But there's certainly other candidates. Obviously, it'd be ideal to have Handre Pollard back. Who knows if we're even going to see these guys in action? It does remain to be seen, but fingers crossed we get to see it. It has been nice to talk about South African players for a change and get some South African jerseys hanging in the background, because pretty much everything we've been talking about with South Africa recently has been what's the future of Super Rugby and are they going to play in the Rugby Championship, all this kind of high-level stuff, but apart from seeing Sale Sharks play, we haven't seen that much of South African teams on the pitch. So fingers crossed we get some South Africans in action soon. We get some more recent stats than most of these ones. But ultimately, what do you guys reckon? Who do you think can start for the Springboks at 10 in place of Handre Pollard? What do you guys reckon? Let me know your thoughts, and I'll talk to you again soon. See you later.